Yeah, the K2fly acquisitions has been a really important part of our growth and our strategy. I think now we've been delivering regularly on acquisitions. We see it as a core part of our competence as a business and a differentiator, our ability to identify acquisitions at the right time and bring them in, and then really crank the engine so that they deliver. So that is a core competence in this business and one we continue to grow. So that started with Infoscope in 2017, in July of 2017. Infoscope is still a really big part of our story, and particularly on that land management side of things and our ESG story. They've had a wonderful partnership with Fortescue Metals over the years that have helped collaborate with us to build this product. It started off in and around cultural heritage management, but then sort of moved across the business into what is now a land use permitting system, or ground disturbance is a number of names for it in the industry, but basically touching on all of those elements of land that you need approvals, permitting, compliance for. If you're running an exploration project, for instance, you obviously have to have the tenement, you have to have access rights, by the pastoralists above ground or the Indigenous people that are that have the rights or ownership over the land. You need to be careful about sensitive environmental areas. This says you need to be extremely careful about cultural heritage sensitivities, livestock, you name it, water, etc., etc. So that system does all these things, and in many ways is a bottom-up approach to ESG management. If you're doing those things well and you're systematising them, then you can actually demonstrate that to your stakeholders really, really well. So really important, and continues to be really important. R-Cubed, which we acquired in May 2019. Something I've been passionate about for a long time is this notion of resource governance. We play on our own in that space, so we provide software that helps our mining customers to report their most valuable asset, the core of the asset, which is their mineral resources and reserves. So their inventory, their mineral inventory. They get to report that to the stock market. Complexity is our friend in that respect, so a lot of those customers are doing multiple commodities in multiple mine sites in multiple regions across multiple codes and multiple stock markets. So if you take the stock markets to the front of the problem, you've got the same inventory in the ground. That's the same, but if I'm listed on the New York Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange, and the ASX, and some of these guys are listed on all three, plus or minus, they're reporting the same inventory but in slightly different ways to slightly different codes. So we are able to capture that data, manage that data, provide very, very deep governance, which is really important here because your investors cannot see that inventory under the ground. So it's important that there's very strict guidelines and rules around that. So we're the only player in the world that does that. So we own that space, and for a long time we believed that there's a real market for that. And that was somewhat assisted by changes to the New York Stock Exchange rules and regulations, which a lot of listed companies on NYSE have to implement by this year, like by the end of 2021. So that's been a great driver for our business. And as I said before, that has been the sort of pointing into the spear in terms of us engaging with a lot of these major customers and at a corporate level, which is really important, as I said before. In October 2020, we completed an acquisition of a business called Sativa. That was part for a number of reasons. First and foremost, Sativa have an application called Block Model Management, which we see as really important and strategic plug into that resource governance, that R-Cubed solution that we just talked about, which enables our customers to go down and wide on all the block models, which is a massive data problem for these organisations now, but it also provides deeper governance in terms of that reporting function. And ultimately, it will drastically reduce the time taken in order to produce those reports and allow those customers to be able to do out-of-season reporting and what have you, just be responsive to the market if they're making acquisitions or selling assets, what have you. But managing those block models across multiple operations and commodities is a real challenge for these organisations. That's fabulous, but Sativa also had really great relationships locally with 3 of the big iron ore players here, Rio Tinto Iron Ore, Fortescue, are already a customer of ours, and Roy Hill. So they have great long-term relationships, building and managing systems for those organisations. So it was a really opportune time for us to get together with Sativa to deliver the product, and there's more products to come, but also to be closer to the iron ore industry as well, which most of you will understand is going through another boom period right now with really high prices. So in the sort of COVID world we were operating in, it gave us an opportunity to be more local, which is not a bad thing, given that we can't travel much, but we're still very global in nature, but with these big iron ore players, which is obviously a good place to be right now. And then finally, we just signed off on the Decipher acquisition last month in March 2021. That's been a journey that we've been on for probably a little bit over 12 months. We told the market back then that we were getting into tailings, because again, in terms of that notion of collaboration and customer intimacy, a lot of our customers were telling us, gee, you do a great job with this governance, in terms of governance and reporting. The tailings use case is exactly the same as that, except instead of collecting geology information or geosciences information, rolling it up from site, packaging it, managing it, reporting it, disclosing it to the stock market. In this instance, you're doing the same, but it's geotechnical information based on dams and things like that. So it's not a geologist, it's a geotech signing off, and then you have accountable executives at the top. So this is a big part of what we do. We don't create standards, so we want to build software that supports industry standards. So obviously we support the reporting codes in resources and reserves reporting all over the world, and now we have global standards for tailings in the GITS sort of world, and that is an industry standard that a lot of people or members of the ICMM and other big companies have signed up to and committed to. So the beautiful thing about Decipher was that Decipher had built some really great software in and around the monitoring and management and reporting, and that's where we sort of overlapped. And then of course we can lay the governance layer on top of that as well. So we're the only end-to-end monitoring, management, reporting, governance solution out there, which is pretty unique at a time, again, when the industry is really looking for these solutions, having signed up and committed to the ICMM standards or the GITS standard.